to For the First Time in Forever, the show that aims to fill the gaps in all of our watch lists. Last week, Tim Burton took us on a kooky trip exploring the wackiness of the afterlife with his 80s comedy classic, Beetlejuice. And if you haven't seen that video, you can check it out by clicking the link in the description below. But this week, I chose to look at a beloved animation detailing one of the most powerful stories of all time. This is The Prince of Egypt. Wait a second. I am going to be talking about spoilers for this film, so consider this your warning now. Okay, before we get started with this video, let me preface it by saying that I am not particularly well versed in religious tales. So when it comes to commenting on the authenticity of this film in terms of its representation and how true it stays to the story from Exodus, I just can't even begin to comment on such a thing. However, I am aware of the fundamentals of the story. Moses, a Hebrew child, is taken in by the Pharaoh of Egypt and raised as a son, brothers with Ramses. When older, he discovers the horrific truths about his adoptive family and the persecution they inflict upon the Israelites. Moses leaves and is contacted by God to become a messenger and work towards freeing his people from Ramses' cruel reign. Now, tackling any biblical story, it comes with its own challenges. For starters, it needs to be somewhat accurate. Millions of people dedicate their entire lives towards religion, so if a film were to depict such events in, say, a lackadaisical approach, well, it could be easily considered as insulting and demeaning. And then when it comes to the presentation of God, even casting an actor in such a role instantly gives a face to such a being, and such imitation could be seen as offensive. But that doesn't mean that stories like this are immune from having cinematic adaptations. One of the most successful is The Ten Commandments, directed by Cecil B. DeMille, starring Charlton Heston as Moses. A quintessential epic in all proportions, this film successfully managed to depict one of the most extraordinary stories to almost universal acclaim. Needless to say though, a 3-hour 40-minute movie from 1954, it's not the easiest thing to sit down with your family and pop on for an afternoon treat, and thus The Prince of Egypt was seen as a possible alternative. Produced under the DreamWorks animation company, The Prince of Egypt clearly sought to tell this story in a way to entertain families whilst also staying true to the source material. Now at the time, DreamWorks were a fresh animation company, clawing their way through Disney and Pixar. And whilst those animation companies, yes, they can be enjoyed by the whole family, they certainly cater towards younger audiences. But in the early days of DreamWorks, they aimed for a slightly more mature audience. Projects such as The Prince of Egypt, The Road to El Dorado, Ants, Spirit, Stallion of the Cimarron, and Sinbad, The Legend of the Seven Seas were films vying for a far greater cinematic style. And one undoubtable fact for The Prince of Egypt is that it perfectly masters the epic scale of its story in crafting some truly staggering visuals. A lot of people, when it comes to animation, think that cinematography just doesn't exist because, hey, it's a cartoon, there's no need for a camera, and that is just not the case. The shot composition in The Prince of Egypt is nothing short of exquisite. It doesn't go for photorealism like we see many animations aim for today, partly because that just wasn't possible in the late 90s, but in regards to translating this gargantuan story, the animators did not skimp in the slightest. The depiction of Egypt is grand, with walls and structures towering over our characters. The sequence where Moses communicates with God is handled with distinct care and grace, and I thought it was a beautiful scene, especially when the burning bush somewhat explodes, with flames and colour swirling around Moses, symbolising the presence of God cloaking him. The moment where Moses turns the sea into blood is equally horrifying, yet reinforces the sheer power that is bestowed upon Moses. And the entire plague sequence left me speechless. I knew obviously what it entailed, and directors Brenda Chapman, Steve Hickner and Simon Wells do not skimp on the vicious nature. From the locusts, to the disease that spreads across the city, culminating in the deaths of the firstborns of many families, this film did not pull any punches. Which was really unexpected, considering this is coming from an animation company that later in its history steered towards a more comedic based genre of films such as Shrek, the Madagascar series, and The Boss Baby. But they certainly saved their trump card for last, because the moment when Moses parts the waves, my jaw dropped. Even after over 20 years since its release, it looks so fresh and stunning, especially as they step through the ocean and we see the flash of shadows of whales and fish. I think I can officially say that The Prince of Egypt is the most cinematic looking animation I have ever seen, period. So the next question that rolled through my head is, well, how can you make this any more epic? Well, transforming it into a musical is a good start, and then having a score by Hans Zimmer, well, I mean, that's only gonna give you bonus points. Now, I'm not ready to say that these songs are all instant classics compared to other musicals, but many of them really serve such a strong purpose to help further the story and explore these characters and their situations. However, When You Believe, which is pretty much the anthem piece of the film and got the iconic cover by Mariah Carey and Whitney Houston, the version from the film itself gave me goosebumps across my entire body. I thought that that song in particular was perfectly used. The best relationship, unsurprisingly, was between Moses and Ramses. We see them start off as competitive yet loving brothers, but once this rift is formed, the descent grows and grows, which I think the film does a very solid job of demonstrating. And what a cast too. Let me just rattle off the names that are in this film. Val Kilmer, Ralph Fiennes, Michelle Pfeiffer, Sandra Bullock, Jeff Goldblum, Patrick Stewart, Helen Mirren, Danny Glover, Steve Martin and Martin Short. I mean, wow. Now, I am aware of the controversy surrounding the casting of this film and how the ethnicity of the characters definitely does not match up with the ethnicity of the actors, so yes, I think in terms of representation, it hit a wall there. But everyone still does a good job in their respective roles. Now, I do have some flaws. I don't think it's necessarily perfect. Some of the animation towards the opening, specifically the chariot race between Moses and Ramesses, looks a bit janky. And I would say that I only really began to properly fall in love with the film when Moses encounters the burning bush. The first third felt a bit somewhat generic. I also think it really sped through to get to the climax. That the second act felt quite rushed, and I could have done with a longer runtime to really delve into the responsibility that Moses now bears upon himself. The Prince of Egypt is an epic film for an epic story. These are some of the most magnificent visuals I've seen in any animation, and the songs help add a refreshing take. It's bold, daring, and seriously ambitious, but I do think that with a slightly longer runtime, it could have helped to expand the story rather than feel so rushed in places. So, after watching The Prince of Egypt for the first time in forever, I can safely say that it is worth it. So those were my thoughts on that film. Let me know, have you seen The Prince of Egypt? Do you like it? Is it one of your favourite animations of all time? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Now, there isn't going to be a first time in forever next week because with Zack Snyder's Justice League coming out, I have quite a few videos planned that I want to get cracking on with those. So we will be back the week after next. So thank you very much for watching. I'll see you in the next video. And here is a little teaser for what you can expect for not next week's episode, but the week after. Hello, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have, make sure to click that like button, and if you aren't already, click that subscribe button too.